So once again, welcome to my class. Good morning all. The previous two sessions have been clear to you know. Politics chapter 4th. First topic has been taught by Shivkant sir, you have learned it. Second part, we had the session yesterday. And now I'm here with the third part of chapter number 4. What is the name? Electoral politics. We were learning about the electoral politics and we have seen a lot of things which are related with the electoral politics of India. What we have learned? We have learned that what makes the elections in India democratic. We have seen that there are different features of the system of election of India which makes it the democratic election. Okay, then we have seen that what are those steps? What are those steps? The division of constituency, then preparing the voters list, then the third one is nomination of the candidate, then election campaigning, then polling. These are the various steps adopted in our country to have a smooth election, a free and fair election. Okay, I told you the most important is election campaigning. Though each and every one is important, yet for the purpose of the winning, for the chance of winning the election or for a particular political party, what is more important? The most important is the election campaigning. I told you yesterday that the political parties and the candidates, they try to focus upon the problem of the other political party, their opponents. Okay, so what can be there that they can form a public opinion, and that public opinion will convert into vote. Thus, the public becomes a vote bank for the political party and the candidate. And there, don't misunderstand that the political parties and candidates can use any of the method to win the election. Though they are used, some tricks have been used in our country also, which is one of the best democracies in the world. In our country also, some of the tricks have been used by the political party, but it is not allowed in our country. There are some laws in our country which have been framed, which is known as election laws. Election law has been made in our country. Election law doesn't allow the political party and the candidate to act according to them. There are some restrictions kept by the election law. Let us see what are those restrictions. Election law restricts something. What are they? Number one, the parties or the candidates cannot bribe or threaten the voters. The political parties and the candidates cannot bribe or threaten the voters. Voters cannot be bribed and voters cannot be threatened to get maximum number of votes. Okay, then number two, what is that? They cannot use any place of worship. Any place of worship cannot be used by them for the election campaigning. They cannot use any place of worship for the election campaigning. Clear now? Any church or any mosque or temple cannot be used as a place, a meeting place during the election campaigning. Then number three, they cannot use any government resources. Government resource in the sense, what are the government resources? It can be government money, finance, or government officials, or stationery, vehicle, anything can be there. These resources cannot be used by the political party and the candidate. And finally, the fourth one is there is a limit prescribed by the election law that how much money can be spent during the election. They have to spend a lot of money during the election, not to bribe, but they have other expenses also to conduct these meetings and all. They have to pay for them. They have to spend money, and they have to use large number of vehicles for the election campaigning. So for all these purposes, they need money. And how much money they can spend? Let us have a look here. It is for an assembly election, the maximum amount they can use is 20 to 28 lakhs in a constituency. It can be either a candidate or any supporter of the candidate or as a donation of the party, whatever it is. That in a constituency, only this much has to be spent by a particular party. Okay, 20 to 28 lakhs. That is 20 to 28, that range has been decided because of the area. In urban area it is different, at rural area it is different, and in semi-urban area also. Okay, this is what in the for the assembly election. And for the Lok Sabha election, for the parliament election, what is the amount which is prescribed? 54 to 70 lakhs for the parliament election. For the Lok Sabha election or for the parliament election, this is 54 lakhs to 70 lakhs in a constituency by a political party or the candidate. So these are the four restrictions put by the election law. These are the some of the do's and don'ts, we should say. Okay, this is what the law tells each and every political party and the candidate about the campaigning of the election. It is very clear. Okay, now there are some more points which have been agreed, or some more in the sense there are some points which are similar also, which have been agreed by all the political parties and the government machineries. What are they? And that is known as Model Code of Conduct. Model Code of Conduct. Now we were discussing about the election law. This is a law made by the authorities in our country. Now this Model Code of Conduct has been accepted by all the political parties and the candidates, including the government machineries. There are 3 points. What are they? Number 1, they will not use any place of worship. Here also I told you, no? Here also I told you the election law restricts them. They are not allowed to use any place of worship. And the Model Code of Conduct also tells the same thing. It has been accepted by all the political parties and the candidates. They will not use any place of worship for the election campaigning. Then number 2, what is the second one? That they should not use any government resources. Here also we saw the same thing. Government resources will not be used by the parties and the candidates. It should not be used. I told you it can be in the form of money or kind. Maybe government officers or government vehicles or government stationery, money. It cannot be used only for a particular party. That is what the second law, second rule of the Model Code of Conduct. And third one is very important. What is the third one? The ministers shall not promise, or they will not make any promises, and they will not lay the foundation stones of any new projects, the foundations of any new project. That cannot be done. They cannot, ministers cannot lay any projects. Ministers cannot launch any new projects. They cannot promise. As a political party, they can promise. But as a minister, as an executive, they cannot launch anything new when the Model Code of Conduct has been implemented. You might not be familiar with this word, but popularly in your language, it is known as Achar Sanhita. Your parents may be knowing it. Okay, talk to them. They will explain you very well in your language. This Model Code of Conduct means this is what implemented before the election starts, according to which there are a lot of restrictions upon the government also, not only on the political parties, but on the government also there are many restrictions put upon by the Model Code of Conduct. For example, the government cannot transfer any officer. Any government officer, any government servant cannot be transferred when it has been implemented before the election. Near about 6 months before the election, Model Code of Conduct has been implemented, and after the implementation, government is not allowed. Now they have been tied, they have been bounded within a limit. They cannot start anything new. They cannot make any promise for anything new. So clear now? This is what the election law, and here we have seen the Model Code of Conduct. Completed it. Election campaigning. Yesterday's, it is only a continuation of yesterday's portion. We have seen that the campaigning of the election is very important. By having following these many restrictions, the political parties try to win the election. They try to get the public support. For that, what they have to do? They have to work for the people. When they are working for the development of the people, automatically the people will vote for them and they will win the election and they can form the government, right? So continuing after the election campaigning, what happens? Polling. We saw it yesterday. What happens on the day of polling? We have discussed very well. Now we are moving to the next topic. Let us see now what makes the elections democratic. There are certain things which make our elections democratic, our election free and fair. You might have heard this term, free and fair election. What do you mean by free and fair election? Free and fair election means there is nothing, there is no malpractices done there. In a fair manner, the election is conducted. That is known as free and fair election. Let us have an evaluation whether the elections of India are free and fair. There are some problems which have been reported frequently through the media. What has been there? First of all, in the very beginning, what is the first step? Constituency. Then second step, voters list. In the voters list, there have been there are certain malpractices. What are they? The false names have been included. False names have been included, and genuine names have been excluded. Okay, in the voters list, I told you that all the eligible persons' name should be there in the voters list, and the people who have died, who expired, their name should be excluded. But in some cases, and in particularly in some regions, we can see that the voters list is not prepared carefully. There, knowingly or unknowingly, some problems have been occurred, like false names have been included and genuine names. False names means the people who are not there, either they are died, okay, they are not living, they are not alive, or they are not there, they are the residents of some other country or some other state, their names have been included there in the voters list. Okay, and the genuine names, there are many people in some constituencies whose name is not there in the voters list, though they are adults. Okay, in this way some malpractices have been found. It is a challenge. Number two, government machineries have been used, government resources have been used. Just now we have seen that government resources cannot be used by the political parties. Both the election law and the code of conduct restricts them from using the government resources. But it is very common in almost all the states of India that they use, the ruling party use it uses the government resources for election campaigning. That is a threat to the free and fair election of our country. Third one, what is the third one? Intimidation of voters. Intimidation of voters and rigging on the polling day. Intimidation of voters and rigging on the polling day. What do you mean by intimidation? Intimidation means in a positive way, the people have been, the voters have been bribed. Bribed, or they have been made into the favor of that particular candidate or a party. That is known as intimidation. Next one is rigging. Rigging means all the malpractices. Maybe in my name some other person is going for vote, so I'm not using my right. I'm not allowed to to cast my vote. In some cases, in some of the North Indian states, it is common, where the common people they don't know that they have the right to vote, but their voting ID has been made, and by using that ID, some others are casting the vote. Then, in some cases, we can see that ballot box have been completely exchanged. Okay, and in some polling booths, it is common. Media reports tell us that in some of the ballot boxes, when the votes were counted, only one candidate's votes were filled in one ballot box. What does it mean? It means all these are known as rigging. Okay, these are the three media reports. They all are media reports only. They tell us that there are some threats faced by the free and fair election in our country. Got it now? Okay, now though these problems are there, then also we must tell that, and we must be proud that India has a free and fair election. India always have a free and fair election. There are some proof also with me. Though these cases have been reported, but they are only nominal, no? It is not widespread one. It has been found only in some or the other constituency. They can be rectified also because they are not spread everywhere in our country. But in a major part of the country, we can see that the elections are free and fair. Now we will see why it is free and fair, or what makes our elections democratic. Now we will see what makes the elections of India democratic, or what makes the elections of India free and fair. Okay, there are two things which very clearly tells us that the elections of India are democratic. Number one, election commission. You have heard this term, I think. Election commission, or its short form as EC, election commission. Okay, that is the first one. Number two is participation of the people. There are two things which ensures, or which very clearly tells us that the elections of India are democratic. Number one, election commission. Number two, popular participation of the people, right? So let us move on to the first one now, election commission. What is election commission? Election commission is an independent body in our country who has been given with all the responsibilities and the rights to conduct the elections in our country. What type of election? Free and fair election. Once more, election commission is an independent body formulated in our country to ensure the smooth functioning of election process and a free and fair election. Smooth functioning of election. It is not election, it is election process. What is election process? Yesterday we had seen 5 points, no? That is what election process. Now, independent body, what is the independent body known as? Election Commission, EC. This is the body which ensures that the elections of India are free and fair. This is an independent and powerful body, and it enjoys all the rights and the freedom as the judiciary enjoys in our country. Last year you completed about Indian judiciary. Who is the head of Indian judiciary? The Chief Justice, right? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is the head of the judiciary. Who appoints the Chief Justice? President appoints. And this Chief Justice, is he working under the control of our Prime Minister or the President or somebody else? No, he is independent. In the same way, EC also an independent body, election commission, and the election commissioner is the highest officer of the body of EC. Okay, chief election commissioner, you can call it as CEC, chief election commissioner. Chief election commissioner is the highest authority, highest official of the election commission. Right now, he is appointed by the president. President appoints the election commission. So we are discussing about the election commission. Okay, first of all I told you that it is an independent body. Then I told you that it is very powerful body. Then appointed by the president. Then once the president appoints the election commissioner, now the commissioner is not answerable to the president. President appoints him, but now election commissioner is free to decide anything. He can have his own decisions like the Supreme Court Chief Justice. He does not have to ask anybody. He is free. He is not answerable to the president. He is not answerable to the legislature. Have you understood it? He is powerful, and the body is an independent. Have you understood? So the election commission in our country enjoys wide range of powers. We cannot see it anywhere in the world. In almost all the countries of the world, we can see that there are certain limitations upon the election commission. But fortunately, we are living in our country where the election commission is an independent body. It is not answerable to the president. It is not subjected to the parliament, legislature. It is not subjected to the executive. It is independent. It can take its own decisions. So now let us move on to the powers of the Chief Election Commissioner. What are the powers of the Chief Election Commissioner? Have a look here. The Chief Election Commissioner has wide range of powers. Number one, what is first of all, he takes the decisions. He takes the decisions about the conduct, smooth conduct of election, all the process of election. We have discussed this topic, right? He is the only one, or it is the only one body which can take all the decisions about the smooth conduct of elections from the date of announcement of election to the day of declaration of the result. Once election date has been announced, then till the day when the election results have been announced, till that time, all the decisions can be taken by the election commission, right? Number two, it can implement, yes, code of conduct. It can implement code of conduct. Model code of conduct has been implemented by the election commission. We have seen 3 points, very important points are there which come under the code of conduct. It has been implemented by the election commission, and it looks carefully, it observes carefully that whether any political party or the candidate or the government misuses it or not, violates the rules or not. And if anyone violates, any political party or its supporter or the candidate, it violates this rule of the code of conduct, what happens? It has the right to punish them. It has the right to punish the people or the party which violates it. Okay, then number 3. We are moving to the third one. What is the third one? All the government officers, or we should say the government, has been ordered by the election commission. The government has been ordered by the election commission during this time, at the time of election, throughout that process. The election commission can order the government to do something and not to do something, including the transfer of officers. Okay, there are certain measures adopted by the election commission, and these guidelines have been transferred to the government by the commission, and the government is ordered by, it is not suggested, it is ordered by the election commission to follow those guidelines. Got it now? And finally, the fourth one, all the government servants, officers of the government, work under the election commission. All the government officers, all the government servants work under the control of the Chief Election Commissioner throughout that time. Now, their transfer is not possible. They cannot take leave unless that particular election officer did not permit them for a long leave. Okay, in this way, all these government servants, they are controlled by the government authorities, but during this time they are controlled by the election commission. So these are the wide range of powers enjoyed by the election commission in our country. Have a look, let us have a revision. Major decisions have been taken throughout the process of the election. Then it implements the model code of conduct. Then it can order the government to take some steps or follow some guidelines. Then all the government officers work under the control of the election commission during the process of the election. This is what an independent election commission in our country, which means that now the government, ruling party, cannot interfere in the process of election. Our executive cannot interfere in the process of election. It is independent. It is completely independent, which ensures that India has a free and fair election. Okay, now we are moving to the second part. We are moving to the second part now. First of all, we have seen that elections of India are democratic. It has been ensured by 2 steps. Number 1, election commission. Number 2, participation of the people. This one has been completed, election commission. You don't have any doubt, right? Okay. Now, participation of the people. The popular participation of the people during the process of election proves that the elections of India are democratic, or the elections of India are free and fair. We have some examples also, some proofs also with us. Okay, have a look here. What are the examples to prove it, participation of the people? Number 1, the turnout during the election, particularly on the day of polling. Turnout on the day of polling it shows that large number of people participated in the election processes. When we compare this turnout, what does it mean? Turnout means the number of people, the ratio of the eligible voters and the people who casted the vote, right? Out of this what number, the as a whole number, out of which how many people have casted the vote, that ratio is known as turnout. Okay, that turnout, that indicates that a huge share in we know that in almost all the states of India it is more than 65%. More than 65%. Somewhere in the states like Kerala has more than 80% of the voters who cast the vote. Last time it was 87% of the total adults, the eligible voters, they casted their vote. That percentage shows popular participation of the people. People are very much interested towards the process of election in our country. When we compare it with the American and the European countries, there that participation is decreasing, but in our country the graph is increasing, popular participation. Number two, in our country large number of poor and illiterate also take part. It is not also, a large share of the poor, illiterate, common people take part in all the process related with the election, but it is not found in the developed countries, in US and in Canada and in the other European countries. That percentage of the poor and illiterate, that is very less. There the government is not at all bothered about the participation of the poor people, but in our country even if he is poor he casts his vote. Even if he is illiterate, he does not know what to read, he cannot read the name of the candidate in the EVM or the ballot paper, but he understands the sign, whether it is lotus or a palm or whatever it is, cycle or leaves or sickle, whatever that symbol has been identified by him and he cast his vote. That is not found in the developed countries. India is a developing country, there also the participation of the poor and illiterate is very high. That ratio is very high in our country. It supports popular participation of the people. Then number three, the common people in our country feel that their vote makes a difference. Their vote makes a difference. That is why they cast vote. Why large number of people go for casting the vote? Turnout has been increased. I told you why the turnout has been increased. Large number of people go, and who are this large number? That they are not rich or ultra rich. They are the common people. The common people cast their vote in large number. Why? Because they feel that each person's vote is counted and valuable. That makes a difference. That is why they go and cast the vote. Participation of the people increased. And not over, there is one more point. And what is the fourth point? That is what very important. What is the fourth point? Do you know? That is, the participation has been proved once again that half of the people, near about 50% of the population of India are members of one or the other political party. They are the members of the political parties. Near about 50% of the people of India have been registered as a member of a political party. Then next example, near about 1/3 of the population of India, 33, near about 33% of the population of India take part in the election campaigning activities. Whenever election campaigning, whenever a meeting is done, 1/3 of the adults, the eligible voters, participate there. It makes the popular participation. Then next example, 1 out of 7 person have working very actively in the activities of political party. They have joined themselves along with that political party. They give their complete time to that political party. This is what the popular participation. Repeat. turnout of the people has been increased on the day of polling. Then poor and illiterate people, large number, a huge proportion of the poor and illiterate people participate in the election related activities. Then common people also take part very enthusiastically, since they feel that their vote can make a difference. And near about 50% of the population, half of the population, they are the supporters, directly or indirectly. They may reveal it or they may not reveal it. They are the supporters of political parties, one or the other. Then 1/3 of the population, they are the actual members, the active members of the political party. Then, sorry, near about half of the population, they have joined in the election related activities. Then 1/3 of the people, they have a like-mindedness towards the activities of the political party, and 1/7 of the 1 out of 7 persons is a member, active member of a political party. All these points reveal that people participate in large number in all the activities related with the election. So these 2 points, 1 and 2, they very clearly tell us that the elections of India are democratic, or the elections of India are free and fair. Is there any doubt remaining? No. There is only one topic remaining now. Then we will complete the chapter. Okay. We were discussing about the democratic elections of our country. What we have seen? We have seen the Independent Election Commission. Then we saw the participation of the people. Now what we are going to see? We are going to see the outcomes or acceptance of outcome of election. It is a long term, you did not understand, I think. Acceptance of the outcome of the election. What is acceptance of the outcome of election? Very simple, accepting the result of the election. In our country, we can see that which is unlike of the developed nations like America or Britain. We can see that there are some features in our country when the election results are announced. There, some features are there. What are they? Number one, a sitting MP or MLA loses the election. Sitting MP or MLA means the MLA or MP is in power now. And in the upcoming election, if he becomes a candidate, he or she becomes a candidate, he or she loses out of 2 out of 3 chances. 2 out of 3 elections, the data reveals that the sitting MP or MLA loses the election. But it is not so in America. There in almost all the cases we can see that the sitting MP or sitting candidate, he or she has been re-elected if he or she is a candidate. Then number 2, the ruling party. The ruling party loses the election routinely. Ruling party loses in almost all the cases. You can have the history of India, whether it is in UP, in your state, you can have it. What is it? Once in our history, we could see that either SP or BSP. Then for the next continuous term, they were not allowed to rule. Then it was changed. Then SP came, then BSP. In this way, it was changed. Or in almost all the states, it is very common. So what does it indicate that the ruling party loses the election? It means that elections are free and fair. If the ruling party used any tricks, then it would have won the election, but it lost the election, which means that they did not play any dirty game. They had a free and fair election. People decided whom to elect. That right was used by the people in a fair manner. They were free to choose the candidate. That is why we can, through this proof, we can say that elections of India are free and fair. Number 3, there are many candidates in our country who are very strong, economically strong. Okay, and what do they do? They buy the voters. How do they buy the voters? They bribe them. They give them money to cast vote for that particular party. And these influential parties or the candidates, they try to buy the voters by giving them money. But when the result comes, Result may be in such a way that they have lost the election. Okay, so they are trying to buy the voters, but it did not. They could not get success. What does it mean? Free and fair election. Okay, finally, the fourth point is after defeating the ruling party loses, the sitting MP and MLA loses, the people tried to buy the votes, they lost the election, and when the election results are being declared, what do? They accept it as the verdict of the people. What is verdict? Judgment. They accept the election result as the people's verdict or verdict of the people, that people have selected, people have rejected us. No problem, we will improve ourselves. People, we might be having any problem, any lacuna in our way of work. So we defeated. We will improve in the next election. That has been accepted publicly by the defeated candidate and the defeated party. What does it mean? The elections of India are free and fair. Okay, so there are three things which ensures India, the elections of India are as free and fair. What are they? Number one, independent election commissioner. Number two, people's participation. And number three, the acceptance of the outcome of election. So you have understood it. Now we have come to the last topic. We have come to the last topic of the chapter. What is that? Challenges to free and fair election. Challenges to free and fair election. Now we have seen that there are a lot of examples in our country which prove that the elections of India are democratic, but there are some challenges to the democratic elections of India. Number one, we know that there are many parties in our country which are influential, strong and powerful, but there are some minor parties also which are disadvantaged. Okay, there these, why they are disadvantaged? They face a disadvantage because they come under the influence of the bigger party. The smaller parties suffer. The smaller parties suffer under the influence of the bigger parties. Okay, always bigger parties are influential. They have resources. They have including the human resource they are having. The smaller parties are not getting that much chance. It is not done knowingly, but unknowingly this is a phenomena which is occurred. Then number two, people with money and muscle power lead the election activities. Money and muscle power means the people with financially they are strong or they are having criminal background. In this way, these kinds of people are very strong in some of the political parties. That is a challenge. Parties should be free of all these criminal activities. Then number three, you know that when the ticket has been given by the political party to a particular candidate, what has been done? The ticket has been given to the family members. What is a ticket? Do you remember? Yesterday I told you what is a ticket. Ticket means that permission which is given by a political party, a seat has been offered by a political party to become the candidate. That is known as ticket. The ticket has been given to the family members by some political parties. We have a lot of examples in our country, in our state. Lot of examples are there. Family members have been given the ticket in the election. The other persons are not allowed to come forward. Okay, though they are capable enough, but these influenced party leaders, they don't allow them to come forward. Family members, that is what a threat. The last, the fourth one, the fourth one is, what is it? It offers a little choice to the voters. The political parties offers a little choice to the voters. Little choice means very less choice. Why? Because the ideology of almost all the parties are similar. They don't find any difference in the ideology of the political party. That is a challenge to the free and fair election. When the political parties are having similar ideology, then what the people should do? They are confused to whom they should elect when their ideology is same. That is a challenge. And then I told you that the smaller parties face a disadvantage. They work under the control of the bigger parties, or they are not able to work smoothly because of the influence of the bigger parties. So these are the examples which prove that there are some challenges faced by the election in our country. Chapter is completed. Let us have a revision what we have learned from the very beginning. What did you learn in the very first part? We learned that the process of election in our country, the why do we need election? Can we have any other alternate in our country to rule India? All these things were explained in the first part. In the second part, we had seen the process, the different stages of the election procedure. There we have seen the constituencies, voters list, nomination, then election campaigning, then polling, after finally the result declaration. Okay, then in the third part, what did we see? We have seen whether the elections of India are democratic or not. What is the answer we got? Yes, of course, the elections of India are democratic. Why they are democratic? How can you say that the elections of India are as a democratic elections? There are three things which ensure it. Number one, an independent election commission. Number two, participation of the people largely. Number three, the acceptance of the election results, okay, outcome of the election. These three things ensure that the elections of India are democratic. Finally, we have seen that though elections of India are democratic, but there are some challenges faced in our country towards the free and fair election, towards a democratic election. What are the challenges? It has been written here. So the chapter is over. If any doubt is there, don't hesitate, you can talk to your teachers. Okay. So we are going to wind up now. We will meet again with next topic tomorrow.